Welcome to this eGrow presentation about physiological disorders and environmental stresses. I'm Kim Williams from Kansas State University. We'll first consider physiological disorders and environmental stress in overview. As we move through major disorders, we'll also hit some key terminology associated with what we observe on plants that are displaying the various disorders. To get us started, note that physiological disorders are not caused by biotic factors, including insects and mites, or fungal, viral, or bacterial disease organisms. Nutritional disorders are physiological in nature, but these are not a focus of this particular eGrow presentation. The physiological disorders that we'll target are those caused by chemicals and air pollution, moisture management, and temperature and/or light. Oftentimes, physiological disorders are caused by a combination or interaction of two or more causal factors. Let's begin by acknowledging that plants can only respond to distress in so many ways. This leads us to recognize that when we see a symptom, there are many possible causal factors. Consider cell malfunction during vegetative growth. A typical symptom is chlorosis, or yellowing of the leaves. The loss of green chloroplasts, which are the organelles within plant cells where photosynthesis occurs, can be caused by many things, such as the oxygen deficiency to the root system of the cutmums in the photo on the left, or magnesium deficiency to the tomato in the photo on the right. But in both cases, it manifests itself as chlorosis as a result of cell malfunction. Or when leaf cells are damaged, especially before they have fully expanded, this results in foliage distortion. We see this with lots of pest feeding damage, such as the impatiens on the left, but also with physiological disorders like heat delay of hydrangea, shown on the right. When foliage cells die, they turn brown and become necrotic. Consider the chlorophytum or spider plant, shown in this slide. Fluoride and boron toxicity both cause leaf tip necrosis, and it even looks a little bit different when you get to compare the two disorders side by side, but damage in both cases is described similarly. If we turn our attention to how plants respond during reproductive growth, we may see a delay of the normal flowering response, malformation of flowers, or bud abortion, and each can be caused by a variety of factors. The delayed flowering response is observed in poinsettia on the left, and the inflorescence is separated from the basal plate and thus aborted in the hyacinth in the photo on the right. A number of plant deformities can occur from plant exposure to chemicals and various types of air pollution. Consider epinasty, which is the wilted, distorted appearance of shoot tips in response to, in this case, the senescence hormone ethylene. It can occur when a heater is not combusting fuel completely, or when a gas-powered vehicle is used in crop production space. Even low levels of ethylene in the air may result in foliage epinasty. The good news is that when plants showing symptoms are removed from the environment containing ethylene, new growth will return to normal. Remember, plants can only respond to distress in so many ways. So here you see a tomato that's been exposed to 2,4-D herbicide drift, a completely different cause of epinasty compared to the ethylene that we just considered in the previous slide, and unfortunately plants do not grow out of this damage. And here you can see plant distortion caused by the pre-emergent herbicide Treflan used against the label in an enclosed greenhouse environment. Damage is foliage distortion, and again, the plants are not going to grow out of this. Some examples of phytotoxicity from plant growth regulator applications is seen in these photos. Above right is the expected ring of chlorosis from chlormequat application to seedling geraniums. They'll grow out of it. The other photos show cell death in vegetative geraniums in response to ethifon being applied at the label rate to defruit olive trees. Plants can only respond to distress in so many ways. So here we see chlorosis and necrosis from a couple of chemical applications, one appropriate and one not. Let's turn our attention to disorders related to moisture management and a few ways that it may influence physiological disorders. This includes substrate moisture levels as well as humidity of the production space. So factors such as function of air movement systems like horizontal airflow fans come into play when we talk about moisture management. We have foliage cells and internode length expanding when water is abundant, as in the impatiens under the dripping hanging baskets on the left, versus leaf cells and internode length not expanding, staying smaller, tighter, more compact, and loss of foliage turgidity, as in the water-stressed hydrangea on the right. Edema is a disorder related to plant moisture status. Small blisters form on the foliage that callus over and may collapse. Ivy geraniums are especially susceptible, but this disorder also occurs on a host of different plant species, including Schefflera, as in the bottom left. The conventional wisdom is that if a plant absorbs water faster than it can be assimilated or absorbed into the cells or transpired, then cell turgor will increase and cells will burst. As such, edema has been observed to be more prevalent with overwatering, high humidity, and cool temperatures, all conditions where water is plentiful for uptake but the plant is not transpiring rapidly. This can lead some growers to plan to keep susceptible species and cultivars on the dry side. What our research at Kansas State University has shown is that actually the key to keeping crops that are susceptible to edema from having it occur is to keep them consistently moist, avoiding really large swings in substrate moisture status. We found that when a susceptible variety of ivy geranium was allowed to dry down severely between irrigations and then rewatered, that's when edema was most severe. Contrasted with the plants of the susceptible variety that we overwatered, we just watered them too frequently. They got very large. Those are the plants on the left in the slide. But we had the least issue with edema on those plants. And remember, plants can only respond to distress in so many ways. So when the insect pest thrips feeds on ivy geranium, as in the photos on the left, the damage may be mistaken for edema, which was caused by widely fluctuating moisture status in the ivy geranium on the right. In both cases, the callus cells seem to be a wound healing response for this ivy geranium species. Also related to moisture management is the occurrence of latex eruption in plants like poinsettias that are members of the Euphorbiaceae family. Those are plants, that family has latex, that white sap that runs through the vascular system. In this case, conventional wisdom is that high turgor causes cells to burst, latex spills over plant tissue, and upon drying, the latex hardens, causing a growth-restricting layer, as in the growing point in the photo on the right. A few times in my career to date when I've seen latex eruption, it's been related to a scenario where plants are well watered, especially late in the day. The greenhouse is kept closed through the night, which minimizes water vapor exchange, and so the humidity in the production environment builds. And a rapid temperature drop, say from a heater malfunction, contributes to latex eruption occurring. I've also just seen it occur on some poinsettia varieties when the plants are grown really, really, really dry and then rewatered. So very much along the lines of what was discussed with edema on ivy geranium. One aspect of light that contributes to some physiological disorders is light quality, that is, the wavelengths of light to which the plants are exposed. We now know that when ultraviolet light is blocked out of the production environment, disorders of intumescences can occur on some plant species, such as tomato. You see those bumps on the photo on the left, pepper, ornamental sweet potato, which you can see in the photo on the right, and Cufia. These growths are sometimes called edema, but in fact they're different, and the best term is intumescence. As we turn our attention to physiological disorders caused by temperature, remember that rate of plant growth is dependent upon temperature, and outside a linear range, when it's too cold or too hot, plant growth is going to be affected. Take the seedling geraniums in the cell packs. The plant on the right was grown too cold, resulting in the wider bands of the reddish anthocyanins being produced. The plant on the left was grown too hot, as were these ivy geraniums. The effect is a reversible whiting or bleaching of the foliage that is going to reverse when the temperatures cool. The plant's chlorophyll apparatus is dismantled under high temperatures, but can be reconstituted when temperatures are more appropriate for this species. Physiological wilt is when the plant water deficit occurs due to high evaporative demand. In other words, plants are transpiring rapidly, but maybe due to a cooler temperature root system, the roots can't absorb water as fast as it's being lost. The result is that foliage loses turgidity, the plants look wilted, but the only thing the grower needs to do in this case is just wait for the soil to warm up so that the root system can absorb water in accordance with the rate of plant use and demand. Now let's consider heat delay, which is a delay or failure of flower buds to develop. This disorder is an interaction between the photoperiod aspect of light and high temperatures. Symptoms on a photoperiodic crop like chrysanthemum is deformity of florets and formation of crown buds. What do I mean by crown buds? Well, crown buds occur when you see crown buds as the formation of a bud on the end of a shoot, but axillary shoots develop along the stem's nodes. So that's like the drawing on the left. A normal stem develops a terminal as well as axillary flower bud, so you get flower buds along every node, as in the drawing on the right. When crown buds occur, which can happen under long days, remember mums are a short day plant, but crown buds can develop under long days after a certain number of leaves have developed. But they can also occur if short days sort of begin the change of the apical meristem of the mum from vegetative under long days to reproductive under short days. You kind of go back and forth between short days and long days, so the plant isn't consistently under the correct photoperiod to convert the apical meristem to reproductive growth. And high temperature definitely contributes to the occurrence of this phenomenon. In research at Kansas State University with florist mums, we learned that the voids that would develop the receptacle and that would develop in the receptacle and the deformed florets that occurred under heat stress were due to high night temperatures during the initial weeks of short day photoperiods. So, in other words, plants subjected to heat stress during the first 2 weeks of short days showed the greatest effects in both the sensitive and tolerant cultivars, and it turned out that it was the temperature at night, more so than the temperature during day, that really contributed to this heat delay phenomenon. Splitting is a physiological disorder of another photoperiodic crop, poinsettia, that occurs under similar photoperiodic circumstances to crown bud development in mums. It's related to lack of consistency in the plant sensing a short day photoperiod as the growing plant converts from vegetative to reproductive growth. A single flower is initiated in the terminal of the shoot, right in the center of that poinsettia inflorescence that you see in the photo, but it fails to develop. Then 3 lateral shoots develop below the terminal flower. One final note. Keep in mind that there is a genetic component to the occurrence of most of these physiological disorders and environmental stresses. We've seen this in the research that I presented with ivy geranium and edema and susceptibility to heat delay in florist mums. If you need to avoid a physiological disorder, the first thing that you should do is to seek out cultivars that are less susceptible to the problem. That concludes this brief overview of physiological disorders. I hope that you found this eGrow University presentation helpful. Thanks to the Glockner Foundation and the partnering universities for supporting this project.